Hello everyone, you reached Business Central Musings. My name is Silviu Vârlan. I'm a Microsoft MVP for business applications. And we started a few weeks ago a series on the exam MB-820. This exam is testing AL developers with AL topics, around AL topics, and yeah, we're going to continue today with a new lesson. The bigger area where this new lesson it is located is called Discover the Foundation of Customizing Microsoft Dynamics 365 BC. The first lesson in this group is about getting started with Business Central and AL development, and this is more about installing VS Code, installing AL extension, a few things about the database, a few things about the base app and the system app, and a few other things. But my focus for today is we want to get you used to tables in Business Central. So let's get going. We are in VS Code, and I think we should start with snippets. Snippets are easy way to get started with a certain block of code and to have the scaffolding of a table quickly. The snippet is table. So I just type table and press enter, and we get now the scaffolding of a table. So is the ID of the table, the name of the table, then we've got some properties, then we have a list of fields, and each field has ID, name, and data type. And also we've got here properties for each field. Also we've got triggers that will trigger business logic on different triggers. Like one of the triggers that we can use for fields is onValidate, which will determine what will happen, what will be executed by the platform when we're exiting a field, like field 1, my field. So that's inside the fields section. And then we've got here a section called keys, where we define indexes for the table, starting with the primary key. The way we recognize the primary key is through this property clustered. You notice that the keys have a name and the fields that are included in the key, and also between curly brackets here we've got various properties. For primary key, one of the property is clustered, but we can see the list of all the properties with control space, and those are all the possible properties for a key. We can also have a non-clustered key. Those non-clustered keys, we're going to have an example a bit later, but those are not primary keys, so not indexes that uniquely identify a record. Then we have another group, FieldGroups, and we're going to see what we can have here. But if we want to start, we can, again with control space, we kind of drive this whole thing. We can see we have two types of field groups, drop down and brick. I'm not going to write anything now. Then we got global variables, and then a set of triggers. What's happening what do we want to happen when we insert a record of this table, my table, when we modify, when we delete, or when we rename. So that's the easiest way to start with a table. I'm gonna add here another one. Let's call it 4.al. We can also have snippets for not only the table but also the field, the format of the field, how we define the field. There is also a snippet for a field on a page, and that's, we won't be able to see it here, but it's called tPage field. But that's not proper here because we are in a table. As you see here, we're defining a table, and the snippet for a page field is not really the right place here. So that would be, in short, the snippet for the table, and that is very it's visible in also in this picture that I included here in my my project. We see how the table is defined and it's organized. We start with table, and then table properties, and then triggers, and then fields. Fields have properties and triggers, and we also have keys with properties. We have field groups. We also have on Microsoft Learn, in one of the lessons, you're gonna see this picture that shows the different types of tables we have in Business Central. And we start with master table in the documentation, but just quickly go over. Master table is responsible for storing master data, customers, vendors, items. Supplemental data is what's supplementing a master table. Currency, payment methods, contacts. The examples of subsidiaries, for example, item vendor table, or also we have setup tables. And setup tables, examples from the base application, we have enough examples in Business Central in the base application for different setup tables, like general ledger setup, sales and receivables setup, purchases and payables setup, inventory setup. And we also have these are transaction related tables, document tables. Those would be purchase header, purchase line combo, sales header, sales line combo. We also have journal table. We have general journal line table that hosts data for different journals. And after we post the transactional data located in the documents or in the journals, we need to store this data into historical type of tables, which are like register tables, like GL register. We have document history table, like posted sales invoice, and ledger tables, like customer ledger entries or general ledger entries. So those would be the tables. But let me show you one thing here. What if I want to create, let's say, a setup table quickly, and with the most frequently used functionality? You would type the following snippet: table setup Valdo. Okay, that this snippet is coming from, I'm going to show you here in the extensions. This is the extension that you want to have, Valdo CRSL language. And what does it contain? Well, just like a regular table is going to contain the definition of the table and then a section for fields. And you see how we've got primary key here, one of the fields, and that's primary key because we have PK is the key for the primary key. We have the property cluster equal true that tells us that this is the primary key. Then we've got a global variable here, record has been read, why is that? Because many times when I write setup tables, I'm going to use my setup table.get a few times in code units or in even in the source code of the table, and to only go once to the database, to have only one round trip to the database, you can call this get record once at the beginning, or let's say on maybe on when you open the page, the setup page, and only once we're going to get to the point of actually getting the record, because and that's only the first time when we run this get record once, because subsequent calls of this get record once will exit here, because when we did it first time, the global variable was initialized with true. Therefore, every single time we're gonna call get record once, we're not gonna get to the get here because we're gonna exit here. This is also very useful when you're opening the page if you don't have a primary key. If you don't have the setup record, because setup tables are tables with only one record, and if we don't have that record, this is what this function will do. Will create that record for us, so that we don't have to create it at runtime using the setup page. If you want to see a good example of how this get record once is used, go to base application. Let's look at the code unit 80, which is the code unit responsible with posting of the sales documents. And you see this variable sales setup read. We have a function here, get sales setup. If the variable, the global variable, is not set up, then we do get. Otherwise, we don't do the get. We don't go to the database and obtain the sales setup record. Let's see, where is this function called? This function is called on run with check, prepare check. So it's called in multiple places, but you're only calling it once, and once you set up the global variable to true, which in our case is sales setup read, then you don't have to execute the get again. I wanted to show you an included a key, a non-clustered key. You're using, you have your queries are using maybe 3 of your fields most of the time, but in addition to those 3 fields, sometimes you're using maybe 2 additional fields, but not always. Most of the time you're using the 3 fields. So the way to create, the way, instead of having indexes for the 3 fields and then maybe the 4th field, so let's say if we defined a new key and we put here field 1, field 2, and field 3. This will be the fields that will be used in the queries very often, but sometimes we're gonna use maybe a field 4 and a field 5 and maybe a field 6. Then you don't need to create, you know, a key for you don't need to create three keys like this. You can include the field 4, 5, and 6 in the key, and SQL Server will build the indexes, the index based on these 3 fields, and will attach to each node in the B tree the values of those three fields. So it's much better to end up with one primary key, because the indexes, as you know, they take space in the database. So instead of having the SQL Server manage 3 indexes like we have here, use only one with included fields. So that's the first thing I wanted to show you. Then there is a property here for the table. Let's see if I can find it. Column story index. This column story index is a property that tells the SQL Server to build a special index. And this index is very useful if you use a lot of analytics, like maybe Power BI is using a special query. So what you're doing here, you will use the fields that you want the SQL Server to build this column story index. So in short, this column story index is very useful if you have heavy queries from, let's say, Power BI, or if you have a data warehouse, big volume of data. That would be probably the most useful use case for a column story index. Let's just go quickly through the lesson and see what else we've got here. So get started with tables. As you saw that picture, this shows the way we organize a table, and Microsoft wants us to organize a table. I call it the table scaffolding with properties, triggers, the table level, and then fields, properties, triggers, and then keys. And you also have field groups. Then we've got the table types, and we discussed about the table types, and you have here a few examples. Let's go to the next one. Table properties, data caption fields properties. This is this text here, the customer number and the customer name. You would just mention the fields that you want to be seen in the data caption fields right after the property data caption fields. Data per company, if it's true, which is the default, the table that has the data per company property equal to true will have a copy of that table in each company. If it's false, you gotta be careful, because you're gonna end up with only one table for all the companies. Data classification is about how you want to classify the data at the table level or at the field level, and it could be customer content and a few other values like system metadata or end user something. I forgot exactly the name of the property. Lookup page ID and drill down page ID, these are two other properties, and you would mention after the lookup page ID and drill down page ID the ID of the page that you want the system to use when you click on, when the users are clicking on a field that's pointing to this table, to your table. You can put the number of the page, like page 40, or you can mention after the lookup page ID or the down page ID the name of the page. Obsolete, state, reason, and tag, these are ways to control the fact that some portion of your code will be obsoleted, and it could be a field or it could be a table. The way we function with the obsolete, state, reason, and tag, we're setting a field that, for example, we don't want it starting in version 25 to pending, and then once we reach that obsolete tag equal 25, we can remove the field from the definition of the table. Let's see next. 5. Define fields and their properties. This is the section fields. We discussed about it. It has an ID, a number, a name, and a data type. And then we have properties for each of the fields, like caption and data classification. We can also have data type enum or option. Better to use enum, or we can have it as type blob. Extended data type is if you're going to use the data type equal extended data type. No, the extended data type is a property that you assign a field to a field, and it could be one of those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 types. It could be phone number, it could be email, it could be masked. If you want to mask, if you, let's say you have a field password and you want to mask what the user is entering in that field, then you use the extend data type mask. Link different tables with table relation. This is about the table relation property we see here in this example, how we define the field count region code. This is, let's say, on the customer table, but when you click on the country region code, the system will display for us the lookup page ID for country region table, and we'll make sure that we're choosing a code, a country region code that exists in that table. We also have table relations that are conditional, and we have filter table relations, and you have examples here and here. For example, the best example is on the sales line. We have the field number that can point to different tables. It could point to a GL account, it could point to resource table, it could point to fixed asset. It's all depending on what the value of another field is, which is the field type. So for example, if I choose the type fixed asset, then the field number is going to be pointing to the fixed asset table. Primary keys and secondary keys. we saw a few fields, a few keys in our example. In my example, clustered equal true means that's a primary key. Secondary keys, you can define them also as unique, which will determine the uniqueness of the records that are using that key. Non-clustered column store keys, that is the example of column store. The property was on the table column store index. So we define, we add the column store index property at the table level, and we add the fields that will represent, will be used by the SQL Server to build the column store index. Then we also have a few things about the keys, and the fact that SQL Server contains a DNV. It's called Dynamics Management View. It's called sysdm_db_missing_index_details, and Microsoft built a page that is the equivalent of this DMV, and you can use it to find out what queries were executed at runtime by the platform, and it could have benefited from having an index. That's always where I go to see if a specific query was run, and the code would have benefited from having that index. And you have index equality columns and index inequality columns. Read a little bit more here and you'll see what that means. It's not very difficult. Keys in table extensions. We're going to spend some time with the keys, with extended table extensions in a future video. Then we have field groups. We've got the data can be displayed in a list view mode, like you have it here, or it could be displayed as tiles. And when you have displayed as like a list view, that means we have a field group of type drop down. If we see the data shown as tiles, that means we have a field group of type brick, and the fields that are in the field group brick will be displayed on the tile here. So we have customer number, customer name, and a field for, I think it might be the balance. Just look at the customer table how the field group is defined, and you'll figure it out. Calculated fields, that's something I don't plan to cover. Examples of calculated fields are go to the customer table and search for field class and see which field has a field class equal flow field, and you're gonna see how we define the flow fields, and in addition how calc formula property works. Create a table in Visual Studio Code with snippets. We did that. We used the t-table. We used the t-table t-table setup Valdo. So I'm not gonna go to do that now. Check your knowledge. Let's see these questions here. What class of field is a sales LCY? This is a flow field. In the customer table, you can confirm that by opening the customer table in the base application. What table property defines the default lookup page for the table? The default lookup page for the table is in lookup page ID. Can you show an image on a tile such as customer list? Yes, and the picture, which is a blob field, should be the last field in the brick field, in the brick field group. What do you need to change in salesperson code field in the customer table so that the user is only able to look up salespersons that have a commission percentage larger than 0? We will need to use table filter property for the table relation. Let's check the answers, and we are great. All right, that's all I wanted to cover here in this lesson, which is called Work with Tables in Dynamics 365 Business Central. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit subscribe. It would be really helpful for me and for my channel. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you and have a great night.